Hi boys and girls, today I am going to teach you how to make this painting of the series of cute little birds that will teach us about the color wheel and demonstrate an understanding of the primary and secondary colors. To get started, you are going to need a white piece of paper. Printer paper will work okay, but if you have sketchbook paper or watercolor paper or something that's a little bit thicker, that will work even better for you. You're going to need a pencil and a Sharpie and something circular to trace nice perfect circles. Mine's kind of a used yogurt cup here. I'm hoping you can find something in your home that you can trace. You'll need to be able to trace 6 circles on your paper. They do not have to be in a perfect row in order to fit. In fact, the other side of this might make smaller circles and better for me. You'll also need a container with a little bit of water, a paintbrush or two, and some watercolor paints. If you don't have watercolor paints at home, you can absolutely do this with markers or crayons or colored pencils, but the lesson will be more successful if you use paint because of the color mixing abilities that paint allows for. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to trace 6 circles on my paper. My paper has been oriented in landscape. That means that the space that I have to draw on it is wider than it is tall. I have more space left to right than I do up and down. I'm going to trace 6 circles across my paper. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do is add the extra pieces to the circles that will make them look like cute little birds. So I'm going to add a curved line here and here for wings. Now it looks kind of like a baseball or a tennis ball. But we're going to add some cute little tiny eyes and an upside down triangle for a beak. Notice how small those features are. And I'm going to do this for each one of my 6 little birds. Notice how close together my upside down triangle and my 2 little dots for the eyes are. In my experience, if you keep them smaller and close together, they're gonna look cuter than if you make them large and spread out. Just a little piece of advice. And now let's add their legs. The longer, the cuter. So we want all of their legs to be standing along the same surface on the bottom. So some of their legs are going to be longer and some are going to be shorter. This one, I want to look like his leg is behind this bird. So this bird is overlapping. So I'm going to pick up my pencil so I don't draw right through that little bird. And we're going to give this guy his own set of legs. Okay, now I'm ready to trace my pencil marks with Sharpie. If you don't have a Sharpie or your parent doesn't want you to use a Sharpie because they're not sure they can trust you not to make a mark on something other than your paper, then you can use a black colored pencil or a black crayon for this step. Don't use a black regular marker because when you add paint, that regular marker will bleed into your paint color and make it kind of yucky looking. Remember, if you're working with a Sharpie, that you should always have something underneath the paper that you're working on so that if the Sharpie is bleeding through, it will catch that. You don't want that to get onto your table surface or your desk surface. now, what I always like to do when I'm finished with Sharpie is to take an eraser and neaten up my artwork by erasing any leftover pencil marks that might be sneaking out behind my Sharpie marks where I can see them. I want those to go away so that my drawing looks nice and clean with only black lines left. That looks pretty good. Now we're ready for paint, the fun part, right? So, I have a student who gifted me this lovely paint palette. My palettes look like this, and I just wanted to show you them together. This is how your watercolors are going to look after you've used them 1 or 2 times. This does not mean that you can't use them anymore. This is still great. You will get great colors out of this. But because I have this beautiful new palette, I'm gonna go ahead and use it. I have my water cup nearby, and I chose 2 paintbrushes trying to decide, is this the better size, or do I think this is the better size? I'm gonna use an orange colored pencil and color in each one of my little birdie's beaks with orange before I begin painting. You don't have to do this step if you don't want to, but I think it's a nice little extra added detail that makes a difference in your finished artwork. Tiny little shapes. And just because I'm making orange beaks doesn't mean you have to. If you'd like to make your beaks purple or different colors, that's perfectly fine too. Now we're ready for paint. When I'm painting, I like to make sure that I get the colors that I'm going to use wet. So I'm going to dip my paintbrush in the water. I know I'm going to use yellow. I'll be using the primary color, so yellow, blue, and red. And that's all I'm going to try to use for this project. The reason I'm getting them wet is because as the water soaks into that watercolor cake, it will soften it and make it easier to get those colors onto my paintbrush. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to start with red. I'm going to pet my watercolor very gently. I don't scrub my brush on there and get the bristles going backwards. Just like I wouldn't brush my hair backwards, it doesn't feel good. I've got plenty of water and plenty of paint on my brush. So I am going to paint this little guy right here red. Notice I'm taking care to go around that little beak so it stays orange. That might apply to you or it might not. If I want the orange or the red to be a little bit more rich or bright, I might need to add a little bit more paint. Okay, I'm content with how that looks. I'm going to clean my brush, glide it on the edge of my cup here so that it's not dripping. And then I'm going to paint a yellow bird. I'm skipping one, I hope you noticed, right here. Anybody know what color I'm going to paint there? If I mix red and yellow, what secondary color do I make? Let's find out. You see how orange is in between red and yellow on my palette? Just like it is on the color wheel. That's because if I mix the 2 primary colors of red and yellow together, I'm going to get orange. So the color wheel makes you think that if you put half red and half yellow, you're going to get a good orange. But a little artist's tip here, if you use a lot more yellow and just a little bit of red, you're going to get a better orange. If you use a lot of red, red will overpower that yellow and make your orange look more red than you want it to very quickly. So I always tell students, put more yellow in it than red to get a better orange. So now I painted my first secondary color that I made on my own. I didn't even dip on my orange. I'm gonna move on to my blue bird. So I'm gonna skip one right there. Who knows why I'm skipping one right there? What color is gonna get painted there? If you said green, you are absolutely right. So I'm taking care to go around that little orange beak so it's a little pop of color in the middle. Now, same thing. Blue is a stronger color than yellow. Yellow gets overpowered by other colors easily. So when I go to make green, I'm gonna clean off my yellow here real quick. When I go to make green, I'm gonna use a lot of yellow and just a little swipe of blue. And that's gonna give me a better green than if I tried to use equal parts of blue and yellow, because yellow gets easily overpowered. brighten that up a little bit. It's a pretty good green, and now I've painted 2 secondary colors. What's this last color that we've been holding out on? If you said purple, you're right. Purple is when you mix together red and blue. Now I have a little bit of yellow in my red here, and I have a little bit of blue or yellow in my blue as well. So I'm gonna take a clean brush and swipe through that. You could also use a tissue if you'd like. I'm gonna swipe through this and make sure it's clean. Otherwise, we're gonna end up with a really muddy looking purple. Okay, make sure my brush is clean. And now I am going to put some red on my paintbrush and some blue, and it's gonna make a purple. Now, purple is the hardest one to make a really pretty color of, if I'm honest with you. It just is. Do you see how that looks almost more gray than purple? I'm gonna give you permission here to cheat, if you will, and use a little bit of the purple from your palette. Another trick is you can use pink instead of red. Sometimes pink is a better mixing color than red is when you're trying to make purple. So he's got a little bit of a dark purple, but that's pretty typical when you're mixing your own purple. And now I have demonstrated that I understand how to use my 3 primary colors of red, yellow, and blue in order to make my own secondary colors, orange, green, and purple. I hope you had fun, and I hope you learned a little something, or at least reviewed a little something.